Hi. So next up is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. For those of you who don't know, this is the first Technicolor video of Disney. So pretty fitting for it to be next. Also, at the school that I am long-term subbing at, or was, and sub a lot, for Halloween, the 4th grade teachers and I did Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I was bashful. Lots of blush. So I'm gonna read this book, and I hope you enjoy. So on the back it says, when Snow White is taken in by the 7 dwarfs, she thinks she is safe from her wicked stepmother, but the jealous queen will stop at nothing to be the fairest in the land. Will the dwarfs be able to save Snow White? Let's find out. So just like in Steamboat Willie, has a nice little picture here. I'm going to try and do a better job of showing the pictures this time. Here is the cover page. It is by Disney Press, so Disney has all the rights to this. Long ago, there lived a kind princess named Snow White. Her wicked stepmother, the queen, feared that someday Snow White's beauty would outshine her own, so she forced the princess to dress in rags and work like a servant. But nothing could spoil Snow White's sweet nature. Each day, the queen consulted her magic mirror. She always asked the same question. Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all? And each day the mirror replied, you are the fairest one of all. But one morning, the mirror said that Snow White was the most beautiful woman in all the land, and the queen flew into a jealous rage. Meanwhile, Snow White attended to her chores and sang a wish into the wishing well. She hoped that someday soon she would meet a prince and fall in love. Little did she know that a handsome prince had overheard her song. The prince fell in love with the princess instantly. Snow White was shy at first and fled back into the castle, but as the prince sang a love song, she began to fall in love too. I'm wishing for the one I love to find me today. The next morning, the jealous queen plotted against the princess. She ordered her royal huntsman to take Snow White far into the forest, kill her, and bring back her heart in a box. The huntsman led the princess into the forest, but he could not bring himself to kill her. He told Snow White to hide in the forest, and he took an animal's heart back to the queen instead. Snow White wandered deep into the forest. She was scared, but some friendly forest animals led her to a little cottage. Oh, it's adorable, Snow White cried, just like a doll's house. She tried the door, and it swung open. Hello, may I come in? Snow White called, but no one answered. Oh, sorry. Snow White stepped inside the cottage, and she saw 7 little chairs. She thought 7 little children must live there. And from the look of this, 7 untidy little children, she said, holding up a rather smelly sock. We'll clean the house and surprise them, said Snow White. Then maybe they'll let me stay. So, with the help of her forest friends, Snow White dusted and cleaned the little cottage. Then she lay across 3 of the tiny beds and fell asleep. Just whistle while you work. Evening came, and the owners of the cottage made their way home. They were 7 dwarfs who worked in diamond mines deep in the heart of the mountain. Singing a jolly tune as they marched along, they had no idea of the surprise waiting for them. As soon as they entered the cottage, they knew something wasn't quite right. Their home had been cleaned. The floor had been swept, and there was a delicious smell coming from the fire. "There's dirty work afoot," grumbled the dwarf called Grumpy. "Hi-ho, hi-ho, it's off to work we go. Hi-ho, 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 it's off to work we go." The 7 dwarfs searched the cottage for an intruder. They reached the bedroom as Snow White was waking up. She had seen all 7 of their names carved into the 7 little beds. She easily guessed who was who. They were called Doc, Happy, Sneezy, Sleepy, Bashful, Grumpy, and Dopey. Snow White introduced herself and told the dwarfs about the evil queen. "Please don't send me away," she said. The dwarfs felt sorry for Snow White and agreed to help her. That evening, the cottage was filled with music and laughter. After enjoying a delicious dinner cooked by Snow White, the dwarfs sang and danced to welcome the princess into their home. Snow White was so happy that she soon forgot all about her wicked stepmother. Meanwhile, back in the castle, the queen was standing in front of her magic mirror. She asked the question she always asked, but instead of answering as she expected, the mirror replied, "Snow White still lives, the fairest in the land. 'Tis the heart of a pig you hold in your hand." The queen gasped in horror. The huntsman, he had tricked her. The queen stormed down a winding staircase and through a dark dungeon to a hidden room in the castle. There, she found her book of magic spells and used a terrible potion to transform herself into an old woman. Next, she dipped an apple into a bubbling cauldron. "One taste of the poisoned apple, and the victim's eyes will close forever," she cackled. The only antidote to the queen's spell was love's first kiss. The next day, the dwarfs had left for work. Snow White was visited by the disguised queen. The birds and forest animals watched in alarm as kind-hearted Snow White invited the old woman into the cottage for a glass of water. They knew the princess was in terrible danger, so they raced to the mines to fetch the 7 dwarfs. The queen offered Snow White the poisoned apple. "It's a magic wishing apple," she lied. "Now, take the apple, dearie, and make a wish." Snow White took the apple and thought of the handsome prince. I wish, she whispered. Snow White closed her eyes and took a single bite. A moment later, she fell on the floor. "Now I'll be the fairest in the land," the queen cried. As the queen left the cottage, the dwarfs arrived and chased after her. They followed her through the forest and up a mountain. Higher and higher the queen went until she came to a stop at the edge of the cliff. There was nowhere else to go. Crack! A bolt of lightning struck the ledge where the evil queen stood. The ledge crumbled, and with a shriek, the queen fell, never to be seen again. When the weary dwarfs returned to the cottage and found Snow White lying silently, they were heartbroken. Snow White was so beautiful, even now, that the dwarfs decided to make her a bed of gold. Day and night, season after season, they watched over her. Then, one afternoon, a handsome young man came riding through the forest. He was the prince who had fallen in love with Snow White by the castle well. The handsome prince had searched far and wide for the princess he had met that fateful morning. When he came to the clearing where Snow White lay, he leaned over and kissed her. It was love's first kiss. And that, my friends, oh, not quite, last page. With a soft sigh, Snow White sat up and rubbed her eyes. The prince shouted with joy and lifted her up in his arms. The dwarfs danced and laughed, and the woods rang with calls from the happy forest animals. Snow White was awake. Before she left to begin her new life with the prince, Snow White kissed each of the 7 dwarfs goodbye and promised to visit them soon. Lifting her onto his horse, the prince led Snow White to his castle, where they would live happily ever after. And that, my friend, is the end of the book. Thanks for tuning in for Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. I hope you enjoyed my adding songs and things. Anyways, until next time, bye, have a great day.